Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, inter-union rivalry leads to protests from gold miners in South Africa that saw hundreds of the workers stuck underground for days. Now, they're finally out amidst murky accusations of hostage-taking. We take a closer look. Also, the March of Progress in Dakar tramples over the city's green spaces. There are warnings that a building boom in the Senegalese capital comes with an environmental and psychological toll for those who live there. And as Lagos Fashion Week kicks off, I hear from the founder of the vibrant showcase of Nigerian creativity. She tells me that the continent's creative impact is attracting increasing international attention, and rightly so. But first, around 455 miners are finally back above ground after having spent almost 3 days in a gold mine as part of a standoff in a power struggle between two unions. Authorities say that they'll now be looking into accusations of kidnapping and assault made by some of the men who'd been stuck, reportedly without food, for days. Clarice Fortuné gives us the backstory.
Mine workers singing and dancing in solidarity with hundreds of their comrades as they were still kept underground, said to be held hostages by fellow miners. A tense situation that erupted early Monday when miners from the AMCU, an unregistered union, prevented hundreds of others from leaving after their night shift. Their demand, the right to be formally recognized as a union. When the police arrived, the AMCU members were told not to react.
Don't react, comrade, don't give them a reason. We know they attack only peaceful people. There are zamazamas all over with guns here. These police are nowhere to attack those zamazamas. They only want us. So I'm begging you, comrades, no one must react.
But for the National Union of Mine Workers, the sole recognized union at the mine, the issue had to be solved differently.
The right to associate, the right to be a member of any trade union is given in the country that we are in.
Some 15 miners have been injured in scuffles, but in the end, all workers managed to emerge after spending 4 days underground. A good outcome. In 2012, rivalry between the same two unions had been partly responsible for one of South Africa's most horrific mining episodes, when 34 striking mine workers were shot and killed by police at the platinum mine in Marikana.
Now, Zola Sholwano, a journalist based in Johannesburg, spoke to me a little earlier on. She told me more about some of the initial confusion about whether or why some men were claiming to have been held hostage at the mine.
While so much has been said around this whole issue, when we are hearing from miners that returned to surface today, they were saying that most of them decided on Sunday that they are not returning to surface because they've had so many issues with the company, which is Gold One at this point. And obviously they fall under a union called the NUM, which is meant to represent their interests. And they feel like the union is failing them at this point. So they believed that if they conduct a sit-in as a form of a strike, then obviously their demands will be heard. And obviously after days without really seeing any movement from that, they then voluntarily decide to return to surface and join other colleagues who are outside to continue fighting the strike from outside.
But we were hearing that there's some members within that group that was stuck underground for several days that didn't want to be there.
Well, certainly that's true. We are told that out of the 500 and, over 500 mine workers that were stuck underground, a very few of them wanted to return to surface. But because they wanted to do this thing as a collective, then the majority then told those ones who were on shift that wanted to return on surface that they cannot go back because this is a strike that includes all of them. And whatever comes out of the strike then will obviously benefit them. So that's how they end up saying that some of the people were held hostage from the situation.
All right, thanks for making some of that clear. Now, when it comes to the unions themselves, our unions are supposed to be representing the best interest of the workers. We have two powerful unions. How does even a rivalry between bodies like that lead to an escalation of the sort that we've seen in South Africa the last couple of days?
I mean, an issue of rivalries of unions is actually quite, it's something that usually happens in South Africa, especially trade unions, where one union that's representing interests of workers wants to, have a huge number or the majority. So in this incident, the NUM on paper is the one that's representing over 2,000 workers of Gold One mine. But most of these workers, as you can see, that most of them are wearing a green regalia, which represents AMCU, are actually saying they want to fall under AMCU, and they are pleading with their company that has employed them to actually allow the trade union to come on board and actually represent them. But possibly they will be able to represent their interests better than NUM.
Sola Sholwania there speaking to me from Johannesburg. Now, Cameroon's finally greenlit an investigation into the corruption scandal surrounding Swiss-based mining giant Glencore. Several senior officials of state companies in Cameroon are accused of accepting bribes from the multinational, which was ordered to pay a €321 million fine over its backroom deals on the continent. Many Cameroonians are demanding that the identities of those accused of having worked with Glencore be revealed. Indira Eteng tells us more.
This latest development was made possible after Head of State President Paul Biya called for investigations to be opened. At the end of the investigations called for by the Head of State, Cameroonians will finally get to find out the top government officials involved in this scandal. It should be noted that this will be a big win for Barrister Keremuna, former Transparency International Cameroon president, as well as some civil society members who have been campaigning for justice to prevail.
They admitted in a court under oath our country had seemed to be unconcerned by this fact. But now that the president apparently has given his agreement that legal actions to commence, I think it should make every single Cameroonian happy. I'm hopeful that finally we shall put the faces, names and the faces out there for people to see who are these guys who don't love this country, who can go ahead and take so much money for their own benefit.
The case in Cameroon involves the National Hydrocarbons Company, better known by its French acronym as SNH, as well as the National Oil Refinery Company, also known as Sonara. Glencore admitted to having paid about 7 billion francs CFA in bribes to top or senior officials of these two companies. That was last year.
You're etching there for us. Now, Dakar is going through a major construction boom, with high-rise towers popping up across the Senegalese capital. Whilst the changes do deliver much-needed housing, the buildings are also unrelentingly erasing the few green spaces left in the city. Sam Bradpiece tells us more.
This new high-rise is one of the largest in Dakar. Nestled between two hills in the Senegalese capital, the Mamel Tower cost the equivalent of more than €60 million, drawn from public and private funds. It'll mainly be used for office space. Taslim's company won the contract to build it.
This building responds to a demand for quality offices. We don't have enough of them. Thanks to the drive to make Senegal more attractive, more and more international actors are coming. Local businesses are also looking for quality office spaces. Instead of renting a villa, it's better for them to move to towers like this one, where there are professionals with whom they can work and create.
The construction sector is booming, and sky rises are reaching ever higher across the city. Today, the peninsula around central Dakar looks like a giant construction site. There is currently just 1 square metre of green space for every resident in the capital, far below the 15 square metre minimum recommended by the WHO.
People who haven't visited Senegal in 20 years now barely recognize the city.
Conservationists warn that the removal of Dakar's trees also affects quality of life.
Unfortunately, all families have seen people impacted by the lack of trees. They get respiratory illnesses, asthma, high blood pressure. It worries us a lot, especially when we think about future generations. What will we leave for them, for our children? A city without trees, a city without a soul, a city covered in concrete.
One of Mamadou Sakho's petitions has seen the Senegalese government pledge to build a 10-hectare city centre park. The environmentalist says the gesture is still not enough to compensate for what's been lost.
Well, Lagos Fashion Week has just kicked off, and until the 29th, the global style elite's eyes will be on the Nigerian city for the latest edition of the vibrant showcase of Nigerian and, in fact, African creativity. Earlier, I spoke to Omoyemi Akarele, the founder of the star-studded event, who told me more about some of the changes that she's seen over the 13 years of running it.
When Lagos Fashion Week launched in 2011, we had the attention of international media as well. British Vogue and a couple of, big editorials, big editorial magazines, to name a few. So consistently, I think consistently there's been support from the international audience. I think the challenge has always been, the gaze that, they're looking at it from. If there's international press or international awareness, and you continue to look at the continent and our fashion and art scene or our creative value chain, you continue to gaze at it through the eyes from a trend-led approach, instead of from that perspective of, wow, this is who they are, this is what they've been doing, this is what we've done for years, and this is what we're always going to be doing. It's never really going to achieve that purpose, So while yes, there's been there's been a wider interest, not just in fashion, but in our music, in film industry, whether Nollywood or across Africa, the digital footprint. So all of that's also contributed.
And you can catch more from Omoyemi in Across Africa, my magazine programme focusing on the continent, which will be broadcast this week from Thursday afternoon. So do try and catch that if you can. That, though, is all we have time for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.